So I was still a little bit tired and was asleep during the live stream. I kind of forgot we were going to have one, to be honest. But we did get the servant that I was predicting we were going to get, that being Richard Lionheart for the New Year's. And now that I am awake and I've got my morning, or I guess my afternoon coffee, we're going to go ahead and check out what this guy's details are. You know, no further ado, no messing around. I want to see how good this guy is. And I also just want to see if he's going to be another Buster, AoE, Saber, or if they're going to do something neat with him. Because if you haven't read a bit of Strange Fake, Richard does have some fairly interesting abilities. I think if they wanted to be like really goofy and wacky with it, they might have been able to even swap his class around like they have with some of the other servants. But that might have been, I don't know, taking things a little too far and trying to be a little wacky. I mean, even for FGO antics. But him being a Saber, I think, is also safe just with the anime coming out. I do want to check out some of his Ascensions and see what they went with this, because sometimes we do get, like, a nice, unique one. Yeah, okay, there's him, you know, chilling in his normal clothes. The art style is kind of throwing me off a little bit, but okay. Yup, Lionheart, dude. They said, yup, Lionheart. Okay. I mean, I think I'm probably going to default to the first Ascension if I ever really use this guy, but this is pretty cool. Bro looks like an Elden Ring character. He kind of reminds me of Blide, but let me just roll. So, okay, so he is a Buster Servant. Please don't make him an AoE. We've got a really strong arts card with the 0.56% NP gain. We got really strong quick cards for some reason. 5 hit extra attack we'd like to see. Alright, let's see the charisma. Lionheart Godspeed A increases party's attack by 20% for 3 turns, party's NP gain by 20% for 3 turns, and their star gen by 20% for 3 turns, while also having an on-attack buff that buffs his own crit star generation by 30% for 3 turns when attacking. How many hits do we have on the NP? We have 5. Because I was wondering if this guy could be like a mini Iskandar or like an Emiya or a Raiko or something along those lines. And even without the, like, 10-hit Buster NP, I think with 5 AoE, if you're really stacking this, because, I mean, you do a Brave Chain, that's like, what, that you're getting, like, 120% bonus star gen on top of the 20%, so you're at, like, 140? I mean, even with a couple attacks, you're going to be in that, like, 60 to, like, 80% range. That's not bad. That's really good. That's... I mean, it's not for the party. If it was for the entire party, then we might have a Caskill situation. But this guy might be nutty. But I'm already seeing that this guy is going to be rather solid if you want to bring him into any multi-core setups. Because just giving the entire party attack and NP gain is good. Him being a Buster Servant means that you could pair him with Merlin. And Merlin absolutely loves getting those extra NP gain on those arts cards. Although, it's going to be a little awkward with his deck. He's got a Lancer deck, which is a little awkward for those. But thankfully, Merlin's just slightly good as a servant. He's a little good, so I think he'll be able to cope with it. Especially if we also get more Buster support servants. So 20% Omni card buff for 3 turns. Gives himself 30% NP damage and reduces an ally's skill cooldown by 1. In the Buster team comps, that's really interesting because you already get that with Koyenskaya. So having a DPS that could do it on top of that, I mean, because you could always be selfish and use it on himself. Plus the new Append skill, just to kind of go over for people, we did get the 5th Append skill over here that does further reduce your skill cooldown. So being Buster and being able to use that with Koyenskaya plus the Append skill plus this, and his cooldowns are already kind of low at 6 in Buster teams. I mean, like, some people might say like 6 turn cooldown, that's not that short, but when you consider that you could have 2 supports that lower that by 2 individually, and he's already got his own to individually lower that, could you just immediately loop all of his skills? I wonder if you could. If you could just immediately loop everything back on turn 1, because that's Buster's one weakness that people will cite, is that before you loop a lot of their skills, they might not have the best damage, especially if you're not taking advantage of the Servant's own power mod or Koyenskaya's Humanoided Man power mod. That already seems really good off rip. And then a 30% battery, so obviously you can use them with Koyenskaya Oberon setups. The NP damage buff being really high, 30% is also very strong. Just keep that in mind. That does mean with Oberon, he's already getting up to 50% and then getting overclocked on the 3rd skill. So 30% battery is good. We're doing... increases... Why is the percentage blocked out? I would assume it's gonna start at least at 50%, right? And at max go up to 100%. Even if it was like 30% crit damage, it would still be strong, but obviously if you're specifically targeting your Buster cards, you'd want it to be a little bit higher since it's a little bit more narrowed in its use case. 20 stars is also really good. Okay, he just seems really strong right now. Let me see over here. Ah, okay. Yep, Buster AoE, 2k burn. Okay, I've been appreciating burn and like damage over time more and more. Literally yesterday on stream, we were trying to do the BB Advanced Quest for Advanced Quest 12 that just hit the NA side of things, and we got the clear because Morgan was able to do the... Oh, no, it was the instructor one. Morgan was able to take the guy out because of the curse, and I was like, oh man, we're NP sealed now, you know, what are we gonna do? And then, boom, took him out with the curse. So, the damage over time, I've been more and more appreciative of. Not even in just the Stally challenge quests that we get, but just in general, sometimes that little bit of extra chip damage can just kind of speed things along. Stacking 50% crit damage is really insane, because if you're going into CQs, you're obviously going to butt blast the enemies with stacking up to 150% crit damage while, you know, you can get all 3 of them up. And with the consistency that you're able to fire NPs with Buster, because you're just doing raw battery farming, that's all but guaranteed. But think about if you have like an NP1 Richard, this guy's going to be really strong if you're relying on face cards. It's a little bit of RNG trying to find them, but by that 3rd wave, you're going to have at least 150% crit damage just on this alone, and then God forbid you find the Buster cards. I mean, you're just going to eviscerate people. You're probably going to do more damage than your NP itself. And then you reduce all enemies' quick arts and Buster by 10 to 30% for 3 turns. Okay, so I know a lot of people are expecting me to come out and be like, oh, well, Richard's like really nutty, he's really broken, but I'm not gonna lie, this guy just seems really strong. He kind of reminds me of Takaru last year, where I don't think they're really changing the game too much, especially in considerations with Arthur recently getting a buff and just how good Artoria is. I'm assuming because I woke up later, they already have the damage stuff over here, but I would be a little surprised if he would say better than Arthur. And for people that don't know, Arthur recently got a buff to where he can do Buster farming, and he can give a 20% attack buff. He has a charisma now, so you can loop the 50% 3-turn Buster mana burst and that attack buff, and his raw damage is a lot higher than you would expect it to be. So let's see, Artoria is still up there. Did they update Richard on here? It doesn't look like it, so if you guys give me just 2 seconds, I will go ahead and run this through the calculator. Okay, yeah, if you're looking for a damaging guy, it doesn't look like he's going to be outclassing any of the other people that we have, especially with how good someone like, say, Salter is, Artoria, Arthur, I mean, even Mordred now after her buffs. But I do think you get the benefit aside from them, because Mordred and, like, Salter and Artoria are all very selfish servants. They pretty much only buff themselves. I mean, they might have, like, small charismas here and there, but I do think you have the benefit with Richard that you're doing a lot for the party. Not only are you genning stars both over time and immediately, you're giving NP gain, which can help out if you're doing multicore and you have, say, a quicker arts looper that is really needing the extra NP refund. There's also the fact that he can really use all of his cards, whereas, say, your Salters, Mordreds, your Arthurs even, your Artorias, they all really just kind of want to use their base cards. They just want to do Buster stuff. But the fact that he's got very strong quick cards, he's got a decent arts card, and, you know, I mean, Buster's not really doing anything aside from damage, but he can really use all of them with this, and this over here I think is quite good. He also seems to be a really good lead NP. Like, if you need to do multiple NPs in a chain, you can always have him go first, and then not only gives overcharge to the second NP, but they're also going to get more damage no matter who they are, because he's lowering all of their resistances. So I think this servant is very interesting. I think he's very strong. As far as where he would rank on, like, the Buster AoE Sabers, like, I think he's closer to maybe, like, Mordred than he is to, say, Artoria or Arthur. Because Arthur just does really good general damage with a nice niche into super large. Artoria just does really good damage in general. Mordred has solid damage and then has a decent power mod against Arthur's. But then this guy is doing less damage. I mean, obviously, we could, like, take into account the fact that with Oberon, he's probably going to perform a lot better than, say, Mordred, because he has his own NP damage buff. But I think he's got that extra utility, so it does at least give you more options. This is kind of what I would expect from a Richard. He's very similar to Artorian. If you don't know from Strange Fate, no spoilers, but he's kind of a Artoria fanboy, right? For lack of a better term. He's a real big fan of Artoria. So the fact that he kind of plays similar to her, and the fact that he can, you know, he immediately bomb stars, has a really big NP damage buff, doesn't have the massive mana burst, but still is giving himself the card buffs, and still supporting the party with a better charisma, I think makes him interesting. Yeah, but like I don't think this guy is like a must summon. You gotta like go get this guy immediately. Obviously he's really cool and I'm glad that he's good, but it's not like the craziest thing. Again, kind of reminds me of Takadu, where it's not really changing up the meta or the game in any like notable way, but it's a nice option to now have in your box if you do summon for him. I think Takadu is a little bit more valuable in that arts AoE saber slot, because Muramasa does pretty good damage as he stacks up and moves on, but his looping abilities aren't the best. I mean, you could still loop with him, but, you know, he's no Masashi Berserker, you know, he's not looping 100% of his NP back. Whereas, like, Takadu, I think was a little bit better, just because, you know, targeting one guy and lowering their arch resistance by, you know, 50% is ridiculously good, and then, you know, like, Divinity's probably a better power mod to have than, say, Anti-King, you know? So that was like a little bit more impactful, but you can still use whoever you want. Same thing for Richard, but I think if you're somebody that is investing in Archer, or not Archer, but Arthur whenever he gets his buff, or you've already got a really strong Rotoria, you've picked up a couple of copies of her from the random banners that she's been on, or just when she was free and available for the Stay Night campaign, you're probably still going to default to using them. But again, not a bad servant to have, not a bad guy to kick off the New Year's. I'm assuming they're going to be saving people like, you know, Alcides, the Assassin. I don't think we're going to be getting Pale Rider. I don't expect we would get him, but say Jack or Hippolyta. I think a lot of those servants are probably going to be saved for like a proper Strange Fake event, which I would either expect A, to come out by like the end of the month, if they're going to do what they did for Samurai Remnant, or it could be something where we get it around, you know, like April, kind of where we get our collaboration events. Like, think of stuff like the arcade event, like Seraph's original dropping. I think Oku originally dropped around like March, April-ish, like around that Golden Week period. So might be a nice little taste for how good some of the other servants are going to be, because if Richard is like the appetizer, then, you know, how good is someone like Alcides going to be when his basis to work off of is Herc, who, again, some people might say has fallen off a little bit since, you know, the original debuts of the game, but the basis for Herc's kit is still really strong. So you take that and you maybe make him a little bit more offensive, you know, maybe give him a little bit of Coup Alter elements, you know, maybe a little bit of Super Orion elements. I think that guy could be really busted. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below about this guy. I think Richard is very solid, but nothing too, like, nut-bustingly, game-breakingly broken.